Greetings once again. Welcome to A River Between Chaos and Zen. My name is Max, and this is the Poetry Podcast from Creative Actors Lab. I've been wanting to get into this one for a little while now. I've told this story a bunch of times if I've ever had anybody in an acting class for any significant amount of time. I've told the story about how I grew up until I was 15 years old with a stutter, a pretty bad stutter, to the point that at the time and place I grew up in, they thought I was either retarded or any amount of things. But my speech, I had great difficulty with my speech until I was 15 years old. I sometimes could not even speak a whole sentence without. I mean, it was bad, kids. So, and I got bullied and I got beaten up a lot, and I had a lot of teachers really not particularly understand what I was going through or what my situation was, or really any of it. And it made growing up really, really fucking difficult. So around 15 years old, my parents finally got me to a speech therapist, and I learned how to do things like breathe from my diaphragm, speak from my diaphragm, do one word at a time. And it was just this sort of this physical process, and I learned how to operate the machine of my body that makes sound come out of my face and sound good and coherent and lucid. So when I was about 19 years old, I got into acting. I'd wanted to be in theater really my whole life, but the speech impediment was just not going to make that happen. So I finally got that cleared up. I was 19 years old, and I got into a community college doing in the theater program. And we had this class called Voice for the Stage. One of my favorite classes ever, and if you've ever been one of my students, you've heard this. But when my voice teacher was up there, and this was back in the day when there were not a lot of microphones on stages, and you really had to be able to project to the back row clearly and lucidly, and you had to be able to do it night after night after night after night without giving yourself laryngitis. And the thing that was just a revelation to me was that the stuff that my voice teacher was teaching us was the exact same thing that my speech therapist had taught me to do, and it just clicked. So, as with any good theater vocal class, you're going to do a whole bunch of Shakespeare, kids. And it really, something about Shakespeare really, really spoke to me. And it did, and the poetry of it had quite a bit to do with it, but the passion behind it. And I was with a lot of people who they had to, they got really caught up in the performance of it and the affectation and all of that stuff, and then the whole idea that Shakespeare's boring and all that. And it certainly can be if it's not done well. But the passion of it really is what spoke to me, particularly like a lot of the young men characters. And I want to talk about Richard III was particularly the one who really most impressed me, just because this was a guy who was so beaten down. He had worked his ass off, and he was a hunchback. He was deformed. He was, this poor son of a bitch couldn't even get laid. He was so, he was in such bad shape, but he was a great soldier, and he went out there and he led his army to all these victories, and they all loved him. But as soon as the war was over, all of a sudden nobody wanted to have anything to do with him because he was a poor, ugly, deformed son of a bitch. Hamlet, another one, Edmund from King Lear. But something, one of my favorite actors, Brian Cox, Logan Roy from the show Succession, has done tons of Shakespeare. And something he said, and I thought was very interesting, that the problem that a lot of Americans have with Shakespeare is they're not comfortable in their lives really expressing their emotions verbally, and particularly with profanity. And he said that, it's just a lot of Americans, they have this problem sort of equating a lot of what goes on in Shakespeare with some of this stuff is just somebody is just cursing a blue streak. And Brian Cox said in this way, it's like, Americans would rather fuck their mothers than say motherfucker. And he's right. But when we started doing Shakespeare, I learned for class Richard III, the opening monologue, Act 1, Scene 1. And I was practicing this monologue all the time. I was doing it at work. I remember, I would be driving in the car and I'd be stopped at a stoplight. Now is the winter of our discontent. And I would just be pouring it on, and I would get to a point in this speech while I'm sitting at the stoplight, and I would turn around, look to one side, and the people in the car are looking. The car next to me are looking at me like I've absolutely lost my fucking mind, and they probably wouldn't be too far wrong about that. But it's just Shakespeare came to me at a time when I had been through a really, really tough growing up, and just to see some of the same characters with the same emotions, the same thoughts that I had that I had gone through, but it's being done in Shakespeare. And the thing I will say is, once upon a time, back then, I got into a production of Midsummer Night's Dream, and I was Theseus. And basically, I was the king, and everything that was going on in the play basically had to do with Theseus and Hippolyta and the wedding and all that. And so much of this play centered around my character. Only I was in Act 1, Act 4, and Act 5. And what happened? It was this beautiful thing. We were sold out. I think every night, we're about 400 people, it was standing room only, and we were getting standing ovations. And there was one night, we did the show, come up for curtain call, take our bows, and the audience is giving us a standing ovation, we're the line of actors, we're all walking off stage and taking the bows, and I had this thought to myself of, wow, here's the kid who grew up stuttering, and I'm doing Shakespeare on stage now in front of hundreds of people, in a company of people, and we're getting standing ovations for it. And I was like, yeah, you bullies, fuck you. And all the teachers that I had that just didn't understand or didn't get it or didn't want to get it or whatever. And so for those reasons, Shakespeare always really spoke to me. I mean, like Richard III, I have my big cheat sheet book here, the complete works of Shakespeare, but like Richard III starts off, he's pissed right off the bat. Now is the winter of our discontent made glorious summer by the son of York, and the clouds that lowered upon our house in the deep bosom of the ocean buried. That is because Richard, being the brave commander of the armies that he is, all this badness has gone away. And it's like, and now, instead of mounting barbed steeds to fright the soul, it's like, now our brows are bound with victorious wreaths, our bruised arms hung up for monuments, our stern alarums changed to merry meetings, and our dreaded marches to delightful measures. Grim-visaged war hath soothed his wrinkled front, and now, instead of mounting barbed steeds to fright the souls of fearful adversaries, he capers nimbly into a lady's chamber to the lascivious pleasing of a lute. But I, that am not shaped for such sportive tricks, nor made to court an amorous looking glass. I that am rudely stamped, and want love's majesty to strut before a wanton ambling nymph. I that am curtailed of this fair proportion, cheated of feature by dissembling nature, deformed, unfinished, and sent before my time into this breathing world scarce half made up, and so lamely and unfashionable that dogs bark at me as I halt by them. And the thing about that speech, and somewhere, at least to me, there's a transition where he goes from like speaking to the audience about how upset he is and how hard he's worked, and these bastards just don't get. I do and I do and I do for these people, and this is the thanks I get. God damn it. But it goes from a transition to where he's bitching to whomever will hear him till he starts talking to God. And it's like, you sent me before my time into this breathing, scarce half made up. I'm deformed. I have an ugly face. I have a hunchback. I'm an ugly motherfucker. And I had nothing to do. You, God, are the one who fucked me up. And I'm a great warrior. And I saved these people's asses, and they're out all drinking and partying and getting laid and all this other shit. And I'm miserable because I don't have a war to fight. And he goes on to say, I was scarce half made up, deformed, unfinished, and sent before my time into this breathing world scarce half made up, and so lamely and unfashionable that dogs bark at me as I halt by them. And he's talking to God. Why I in this weak piping time of peace have no delight to pass away the time, unless to spy mine own shadow in the sun, and descant upon mine own deformity. Why I in this weak piping time of peace have no delight to pass away the time, unless to spy mine own shadow in the sun, and descant upon mine own deformity. Therefore, since I cannot prove a lover to entertain these fair well-spoken days, I am determined to prove a villain and hate the idle pleasure of these days. And here's where he starts talking to God. It's like, you know what, dude? I've about had enough trying to be a good guy. I'm going to be an evil son of a bitch. And he sort of makes the rationalization to God and to himself of, I've worked so hard, I have done all this, and this is my life. How the fuck dare you? What kind of an incompetent, useless God are you? So just for that, I'm now going to be evil. And I'm gonna be really fucking good at it. Therefore, since I cannot prove a lover to entertain these fair well-spoken days, I am determined to prove a villain and hate the idle pleasure of these days. Thoughts I have laid, inductions dangerous by drunken prophecies, libels and dreams, to set my brother Clarence and the king in deadly hatred, one against the other. And you can tell he's just getting a hard-on over this idea. And he goes on to say, and if King Edward be as true and just as I am subtle, false, and treacherous, this day should Clarence be closely mewed up about a prophecy which says that G of Edward's heirs the murderer shall be. And then he goes, dive thoughts down in my soul. Here Clarence comes. Good morrow, cousin. What means this armed guard that waits upon your grace? As if I have no fucking idea what is about to transpire, because I did all this. But then you start to see this like split schizophrenic personality of Richard. It's kind of like, I'm going to be evil. Oh, hi, I'm the sweetest little lamb on planet Earth. Hi there. And there was just something about that, villains can be, as an actor, villains can be tremendously fun to play. And particularly ones that are just so messed up in the head, and because part of the thing of being an actor is when you're playing villains, you've got to understand your character, and you really cannot pass judgment on them. It's just, I've heard a lot of actors say, particularly when they get roles like that, it's just like, I just don't understand this character. So it becomes a lot of, I'm going to speak in this particular way, and I'm going to use these kind of mannerisms, and use this kind of stage direction. But it's like, I don't understand the character. I don't, and to the point of like, I don't like this character. And it's one of those things, you may not like them, but you have to understand them. And honestly, once that understanding comes along, that's when you start to go, oh my God, you poor thing. I feel so sorry for him. I'm sorry. I'm sorry all this shit has happened to you. I'm so sorry. Because it's obviously hurt them. It's obviously broken them. And I've heard I heard an interview with Jim Carrey, of all people, saying, he said, I am as a human being, I am broken. I am just shattered. I have had all this stuff come down in my life, and I'm just broken. And there's no way that the pieces are ever going to get put back together again. So as an actor, he said, it gives me the opportunity to take these broken parts of my soul and my psyche and my heart, and arrange them from character to character in these beautiful mosaics that I would not be able to do otherwise, had all this shit not happened in my life that just hurt me and broke me. And ultimately, when I heard that, I went, for all the stuff that happened to me, it's ultimately a gift, or at least that's what I'm going to make of it. Because I have the choice of, like, I could be the most bitter son of a bitch in the world, but I choose not to be. But rather than letting all this stuff that happened in my life, and I'm speaking as the character, I'm also speaking as myself, I can use this, and I can make some really beautiful things out of this. And so Shakespeare just really spoke to me. Another one I did from back then, talk about Shakespeare and the Angry Young Man. Edmund from King Lear. Basically, right from the beginning, starts off, says, "Thou, nature, art my goddess. To thy law my services are bound." Basically, what that says is, he's either some kind of either a pagan or a Wiccan, or some such nature-based religion as that, and not of Christianity, not of and that is. Right off the bat, that's when whatever your spiritual calling is in conflict with everybody else around you, that's going to set you right off. So basically, when Edmund comes in, and this is Act 1, Scene 2 of King Lear, that's a hall in the Earl of Gloucester's castle, or Gloucester, I don't know. I'm an American, pardon me if I'm mispronouncing this. But he basically goes into his church, or he goes into wherever his place of worship is, which really for a lot of pagans is wherever. This desk I'm sitting at right now, this can be a church and my altar, my yard outside, the street I'm walking on, the forest, the bedroom, the whatever. It's all my altar. It's all my place of worship. It goes in, and it's kind of one of those things, you go up to your God and you go, what the fuck am I supposed to do here? I mean, and he's like, "Wherefore should I stand in the plague of custom that permits the curiosity of nations to deprive me, for that I am some 12 or 14 moonshines the lag of a brother? Why, bastardy, wherefore base? when my dimensions are as well compact, my mind as generous in my shape, as true as an honest madam's issue? Why brand they us with baseness, bastardy, base? Who in the lusty stealth of nature doth take more composition and fierce quality than doth within a dull, stale, tired bed go to the creating of a whole tribe of fops got tween sleep and wake? And in that way, basically, on top of the fact that his religion, his spiritual beliefs, his what he considers to be his divinity, does not match up and is going to be ridiculed and chastised and punished for not going along with the major religions of the time and place. And on top of the fact, basically what he's saying is, okay, my mother got knocked up by some non-existent meathead who is not here anymore, so I don't have a daddy, or maybe I do somewhere in the world, but he ain't here and he's never been here. And how the hell is that my fault? And he's like, I have just as much to offer. I just, it's all well and fine if you want to get married and have a bunch of kids, but frankly, I got balls. Because I have to contend with adversity all the time. I have to contend with what you motherfuckers think of me and my religion and how I was born. All stuff that I don't have any control over how I was conceived. And this to me is what I see as where my soul lies, nature being my goddess. And y'all are just going to persecute me. It does. So it's like, he basically has this, I'm not going to say or do anything right, so I'm just going to shut up and stop talking because you guys don't get me. You don't want to get, you don't know, you don't want to know, you don't care, you don't want to care. I suck and fuck me. Okay? So he goes on getting that rationalization. Well then, legitimate Edgar, I must have your land. Our father's love is to the bastard Edmund as to the legitimate. Fine word, legitimate. And when he says legitimate, it's like, motherfucker. You. Well, my legitimate, if this letter speed and my invention thrive, Edmund the Base shall top the legitimate. And basically, his father would be not his birth father, not the sperm donor to the cause here. It's like, well, Edmund the Base shall top the legitimate. I grow, I prosper. And then he ends. Then at the end of it all, and I thought, I love this last line. Is now gods stand up for bastards. And me being a young man on stage doing Shakespeare, God, I love that. I just loved that. It was kind of like I do for you people. I'm just as strong and good and smart and intelligent and strong and capable as anybody. How dare you treat me like shit? Well, guess what? I'm going to treat you like worse. And you just know these guys are getting a boner over that stuff because it's like, they've been put down and put down and put down and treated like shit their entire lives. And all of a sudden it's like, this is the only way out. I'm going to be a villain. And boy, I'm going to be a good one. And then, the other one I learned around that time, and I could actually go on quite a bit about all this Shakespeare, but I wanted to finish with Hamlet, To Be or Not to Be. And the thing, it's just, gee, that play's been done once or twice, hasn't it? And in some instances, done pretty damn well. But the whole speech of To Be or Not to Be, I think it was the first monologue I think it was probably one of the first monologues I ever learned. And there's all these different, there's Laurence Olivier has one where he's doing this speech and he's sitting on the edge of a cliff above, the ocean and jagged rocks, and he's got a dagger in his hand and he's all forlorn, and the camera's going, I was like, to be or not is the question, whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them. And it's like, oh, suicide. That's the answer. And I think the thing that just resonates so much about that is I've been there myself. And I've known a lot of other people who've been the same. I had on a few occasions worked on a crisis line. And I had, over the course of time, I actually had 3 suicidal people. I literally talked somebody off a ledge one time. And so it just, for as horrible as all that is, there do come times in people's trials of mental health that they think about suicide and go, that's the best fucking idea I've ever had. And then sometimes they act on it. More often than not, they don't. But just to even get to that point of killing myself, what a great idea. I've had a very dear friend that I lost in that way. And I remember he back in the day of Facebook, prior to him, he basically hung himself over the back of a door. And from what I could tell, it looked like he had had an affair, or his wife had had an affair, or there was a lot of other stuff and drug use and money problems and animosity and all this stuff. And he posted on Facebook this long thing of saying, look, I'm not a saint, I'm not a perfect person, I've fucked up so many times. And I just remember I was writing back to him going, dude, please don't talk about yourself like that. I mean, come on, we're all human beings, we all fuck up. And sometime later, a mutual friend of ours said, hey, have you heard from Steve lately? And he just kind of looks and goes, yeah. Steve, in his words were, Steve offed himself. And to this day, I don't think I'll ever get over that one. But now, the thing about Hamlet is there are some interpretations of it where Hamlet is just all by himself, and he's just going, this is it, I think killing myself's the best way to go. The other interpretation is like he thinks people, and he's in some instance, it's been interpreted any amount of ways, but that the people he perceives as his enemies, and they are his enemies, are watching him, and he's going, I've got to make myself look crazy. So you kind of get caught in this thing with Hamlet of what, as he's doing the speech, to what degree is he putting on an act to fake out the people who he's ultimately going to conquer, or so he thinks? And to what degree is he really going through it? But it just so spoke to me as being, my own young man's anger and my own sadness, and the whole idea of me just being an actor and discovering how much I loved acting. And here he is acting, but he's not acting on stage. He's acting to avenge the death of his father, to bring justice to those who have killed his father, has wronged his family. He goes, to be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep. And there's the rub, for in that sleep of dreams, what dreams may arise, once we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. And there's the rub that makes calamity of so long life, for who in the lestiest, and he goes on, and I, to be perfectly honest, I'm doing this right now, and it still touches me. It still touches me to this day. Their enterprises, and then he talks about the fear, and enterprises of great pitch and moment turn awry and lose the name of action. And I just want to take him under my arm and go, dude, don't talk like this. Because I will say one last thing. One of the phone calls I had on the crisis line was of a young woman who, less than 24 hours prior to speaking to me, had been sexually assaulted by a family member. And she said, I'm going to commit suicide. And the last thing you want to do when you are hearing that is you don't want to judge these people, you don't want to pep talk them, you don't want to bullshit them, you don't want to do any of that. You want to listen and get them to talk, and what happens is they answer their own question. And then, as I was talking to this young lady, she got into the subject of revenge. And then she said to me, living well is the best revenge. And I went, exactly. And it was at that point in the conversation where she turned away from what she was going to do and was going to live her best life, in spite of it and because of it. And I just hear Hamlet, and I want to take the poor guy under my arm and go, dude, please don't. Please don't. And that's why this has all spoken to me over the years. It's just for me personally, the eloquence and the poetry of Shakespeare, and the humanity, the depth of the humanity, the joy and the love and the laughter and all of that, but the deep, dark pits that we all find ourselves in from some time, that it's all expressed with such eloquence. And for that, I'm very, very grateful. And on that note, I could go on and on and on forever about Shakespeare. But as I say, I am no scholar of any of this, and certainly not of Shakespeare, but I always love reading the stuff. I always loved the opportunity anytime that I got a chance to get up and do this stuff and perform this stuff and speak. And I've always been so grateful. I didn't want to wind up like Hamlet. Until next time, thank you for listening. May the long-time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way on. Keep writing, everybody.